A little girl named Alicia was playing with butterflies in a field when her father, who was out plowing a plot of land, called her to come home. At home, her father was carving an owl out of wood with a knife, while Alicia asked why everything on the map around Edthea was completely black. Truthfully, he didn't really know either, but he explained that the world goes on beyond the continent of Edthea. However, in those dark areas, terrible black beasts reside. Among those beasts, the 4 great kings stand guard over the 4 cardinal points, and every expedition or research team that's ever been sent has been wiped out. These 4 kings have always stopped humanity from venturing beyond Edthea's borders, and Alicia's father believes the world must be far bigger than they know. Maybe people will always be confined to Edthea unless the old legend comes true, that among all heroes, a chosen few, wielding weapons given by the King of Haydn, will defeat the 4 kings of the Black Beasts. Still, it won't be easy. These evil kings are powerful enough to split the sky and the earth, which is why those special weapons from Haydn are needed. They can multiply the strength of whoever uses them many times over. Alicia became fascinated by these weapons, so her father patted her on the head and said that to wield one, she'd first have to be recognized as one of those heroes. Hearing this, the little girl promised to become a hero, so she could explore the entire world. Years later, in the next scene, a carriage bounces along a road at night, jostled by a rock in its path. The noise wakes a weary warrior, who looks over at her companions inside the vehicle. Holding the owl pendant her father had made, Alicia quietly tells him that the time has come. Even if he can't be there with her, it's finally time to chase the answer to her dream. As they travel, a warrior named Katz, whose regalia is the Scythe of Water, remarks that seeing so many regalias gathered in one place is breathtaking. Beside him, Horgus, a burly man who wields the muscular plow regalia, points out that these are the legendary weapons, granted only to those proven worthy to be called heroes. Merlot, who possesses the bottomless well regalia, tells the guys to keep it down, warning that these regalias could easily destroy a carriage like this. Mudo, with his great bull's horn regalia, thinks it'd be dumb to wreck their ride home. Katz finds it interesting how everyone comes from a different corner of the world. Horgus from Thorn, Merlot from Haydn. Then there's Minarch, whose Eldorado regalia and mixed bloodlines mean he doesn't even know where he's from. Finally, the men express some curiosity about Alicia's name, but before she can answer, Stefan, who wields the Pegasus regalia, interrupts to warn that they're now deep in beast territory, which means an attack could come at any moment. Horgus quietly asks his neighbor why this guy is acting like the leader, but Mudo thinks they should let it slide. Stefan really is the most skilled among them. Suddenly, one of the carriage horses whinnies, and the carriage stops. All the warriors fall silent, until the driver calls out that the road ahead is impassable by carriage. Before anyone can react, black beasts attack the man outside and the horses, and the warriors jump out to face their enemies. Stefan orders the archer to clear a path and the lancer to advance, while he and Alicia Glenfall, with her stone swallow regalia, will take care of the rest of the beasts. The plan is to reach the summit without losing anyone. The archers pick off the beasts at the front, clearing a path for the rest of the soldiers, who rush into a cave up ahead. From the top of a mountain, a monster ponders that if the world emerged from chaos, so must he have been born from it. Inside the cave, the warriors dispatch their foes. Cat spins like a tornado, showing impressive skill by taking down several enemies at once. Not to be outdone, Stefan gathers a ball of energy so powerful it vaporizes countless monsters deep within the cave. Mudo and Merlot run into a 3-headed serpent, but Stefan steps in and, with his cutting wave technique, slices all 3 heads clean off. One head still clings to life for a few seconds, but Alicia finishes the job by driving her sword through its eye. After clearing the cave, the group steps outside and Stefan asks if they've reached the fortress of the King of the Black Beasts. He insists that they're so close to becoming legends they'll soon be the first true heroes. But then, the ground starts to shake, and Alicia suspects the Lord of the Moonlit Mountain is drawing near. Sure enough, atop the highest peak of the fortress, a monster unleashes a sinister surge of electricity that tears through the front lines, heralding the arrival of Clevitus of the Moonlight, one of the 4 kings of the Black Beasts, ruler of Edthea's far south. Despite the creature's terrifying aura, Stefan reminds everyone that they are the 13 heroes chosen by the King of Haydn. Swearing by the crimson steel of the apex and his own pride, Stefan vows to defeat this enemy. With that, the leader charges forward, dragging the other warriors with him. But Stefan is ripped apart in an instant by a tail strike too fast for any human eye to follow. Enraged, Horgus tells the others to get behind him. The giant lunges with his crushing wave attack, but is beheaded just as easily by Clevites. 2 more heroes fall to the beast's tail, and that's when Alicia realizes that the tails can emerge from the warrior's very own shadows. She urges her comrades to keep jumping as often as they need, so their shadows stay out of reach. When one of the tails comes for her, the heroine uses her heavenly sprint to dodge and quickly position herself for a counterattack. In that moment, Clevites recognizes the intelligence of this particular opponent. Though not everyone is so quick-witted, Merlot, wielding his spear, calls forth the Earth Dragon. But despite the impressive display, the Black Beast is incomparably stronger, and with its many tails, it tears the Haydn warrior apart with depressing ease. Mudo rushes forward with his precision thrust, sending a bolt of energy through his sword. Clevites reflects that it's been about 1,000 years since he last saw humans up close until Mudo is impaled and killed by another of the monster's tails. Amidst all the chaos, Alicia stuck to her strategy, the very thing that had kept her alive until now. Clevites figured these humanoids were probably no more than vermin, so he couldn't imagine how they'd managed to get this far. Meanwhile, Katz was killed in brutal fashion, but Alicia Glenfall managed to push forward a few more yards. The beast wondered what these enemies were after and what could possibly have happened in these 1,000 years. Then, the heroine landed a blow on the creature's front horn with her sword, but it didn't leave a scratch. Clevites thought, if humans were going to keep threatening his lands, he needed to see things with his own eyes. With that in mind, he unleashed overwhelming power and tore Alicia apart. Still alive, she begged her father's forgiveness for failing him and for never finding an answer to her dream. In the next scene, we shift to the kingdom of Haydn in the capital city of Hydrat, where a humanoid blacksmith works patiently at his forge. After finishing his shift, he steps out of the workshop and gazes at the moon, its light filtering through the chimney smoke. That's when Clevites appears, fury incarnate, throwing the city into panic. In his mind, he thinks of the beings who invaded his realm. Calling themselves heroes, they claim to be chosen by the king of Haydn. And that, he realizes, is why the Black Beast appeared. Royal crossbowmen take up positions to eliminate the intruder. Clevites, hell-bent on revenge, intends to slaughter anyone in his path, just as they did to his own kind. With his tails, he bats aside every bolt they fire, barely noticing the archers as he charges straight toward his true target, the king, who must be in Hydrat's capital. Watching the monster approach, the royal guards rally around the palace walls, manning their catapults and ballistae in a desperate attempt to hold the enemy at bay. As soon as Clevites is in range, the siege engines are unleashed, but even those mighty projectiles are nothing against the force of the beast's tails. The closer he gets, the more convinced Clevites becomes that these humanoids are nothing more than worms. Soon, his rampage leaves the palace walls in utter chaos. At that moment, the king of Haydn is warned of the Black Beast's invasion. Already knowing what's at stake, the monarch mourns the failure of the heroes and the fact that Haydn's blades never reached the level of Hydrite mana. Panicked, a soldier begs the king to flee, but the ruler sees no point in running when there's no escape. Instead, he orders the royal forge to be sealed, insisting that the fire of Haydn must not be extinguished. Around the wall, soldiers at the east gate open doors 1 through 6, readying the ballistae in each newly opened compartment. As the weapons are trained on their target, one soldier warns that their shot could hit the royal castle, but another insists that only His Majesty and the royal forge need to survive. All the while, Clevites wonders what made those heroes so different from these opponents. The ballistae fire, but the beast catches the massive bolts as if they were made of paper. Clevites suspects the hero's weapons must have been special. The woman's red blade, after all, managed to mark his horn. Even a worm armed with that could become a real threat. So, he hurls the bolts back at the defenders, smashing the castle's defenses to pieces. Realizing that these humanoids might improve their weapons over time, Clevites decides it's time to assess just how dangerous they could truly become. Meanwhile, the king opens the door to Haydn's special forge. Seeing the access tunnel on the verge of collapse, he quickly slams the door shut in a desperate attempt to keep the beast out. But Clevites is so monstrously powerful that he destroys the entire palace as if it were nothing more than a toy in his hands. Spotting the richly dressed figure, the beast remarks on the man's regal appearance and assumes he must be the king. The humanoid is stunned to hear Clevites speak the human tongue. After all, he's just a monster. Clevites warns the king to watch his words, for the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. This conversation won't just affect Haydn, but also Dun, Org, Slada, and Bent. All the lands of Edthea could be reduced to dust if these talks go south. Even if he destroys this kingdom and all its people, another clan will eventually rise elsewhere and bring havoc to the territory of magical beasts. Hoping to understand the nature and motives behind these beings, Clevites asks the king of Haydn why he wished for his death. The king replies that a beast could never understand, and for that, his head is cut off. Even so, Clevites claims he understands now. With that, the beast drops the wreckage of the fortress, its walls pierced by his tails, wreaking even more devastation. As he leaves the ruined land behind, he resolves to raise an army to wipe out humanity. Amidst the wreckage, Clevites finds a crying baby beside a young boy, barely clinging to life under the rubble. The boy pleads for the baby to be spared, but Clevites, unwavering in his resolve to exterminate every human, tells the boy to hate his fate for being born in Haydn. The wounded child protests the baby didn't choose where to be born, and the horrors the beast endured shouldn't be the reason for the innocent's death. But to Clevites, all humanoids are the same. Even if the baby is helpless today, one day it will grow up and take up a sword against the black beasts. Humanoids can't even agree on peace within their own lands, let alone lands that aren't theirs. Still, if the boy believes this tiny creature deserves to live, he must prove it right now. Sadly, the boy admits he can't. He's at death's door. Even so, he promises the child herself will become that proof. With those final words, the boy dies, and Clevites takes the baby with him. Truth be told, nothing the boy said had convinced him, but knowing how fast humanoids grow, Clevites is willing to wait and see what kind of proof this child might become. Next, we're told that the continent of Edthea was once home to 5 human clans. The first was called Dorn, the largest of them, all renowned architects and skilled warriors. From this clan emerged 2 great nations, Eslan and Boarate, which shared Dorn's central lands. The second clan was Org, a courageous forest people, gifted hunters and masters of herbal medicine. Third came the Slada, a clan of aquatic folk, talented sailors and swimmers who preferred to keep their distance from the others. The fourth, known as Bent, were wild barbarians who lived off the land and relied heavily on their own strength, though unity was sorely lacking among them. Finally, there was the Haydn, the oldest and most enigmatic clan of all, famed for their expertise in metallurgy and engineering. Their lands were ringed by mountains, making them the only civilization capable of forging black weapons from magic ore and mana. The secrets of this craft were closely guarded by the royal family, who lived in the capital, Hydrat. Through their weapons trade, they forged a long and storied alliance with Adorn. As the clans intermingled, most of the population became half Haydn. True-blooded Haydns grew increasingly rare. The world stretched far beyond Edthea, but none of the 5 clans knew what awaited them out there. The land of the black beasts encircled the continent, and the 4 beast kings blocked every path. Back in the present, on Moon Mountain, black beasts closed in on the tiny Haydn child, but Clevites intervened before she could be devoured. Even if he had little patience to protect such a fragile, defenseless creature from every threat that crossed their path. To keep the baby in physical form, even if only temporarily, the beast used his extraordinary powers. But that didn't solve the underlying problem. The baby's only protection was a thin, vulnerable coat of hair that, while it looked like armor, left the child covered in her own filth. To fix this mess, the beast dropped the baby into a pit crawling with insects that fed solely on waste. Once she was cleaned, the child kept crying non-stop, wearing down her new guardian's patience by the second. Out of patience, Clevites swore that humanoid children grew up after just a few nights. But as time dragged on, he found himself regretting ever listening to that wounded woman in the rubble. Still, going back on his word would tarnish his reputation as king of the black beasts. So Clevites swallowed his pride and kept caring for the brat. After all, this wasn't just any child. This was the one who, supposedly, would prove that humanity deserved to survive. In the next scene, we glimpse a tragic memory from Alicia Glenfall, watching her father die right before her eyes. Consumed by rage, she longed to become a hero and take down the king of the black beasts. Snapping back to the present, Glenfall jolts awake with a massive scar across her left eye. Disoriented, she's convinced she must be dead. Spotting Clevites right in front of her, she reaches for her sword only to realize it's missing. Clevites explains that he tossed the weapons of every intruder into the valley. But Alicia was different. She had value. The Beast King had revived her, and she could only move thanks to the magical blood he'd given her. In short, Alicia Glenfall was now undead. Utterly bewildered, the heroine struggled to process what she just heard. Ready or not, Clevites revealed the real reason for bringing her back. he needed milk to feed the rescued child. Using mental powers, the monster could control the human's movements. Against her will, Alicia found herself desperately lifting her shirt. When not a drop of milk came out, Clevetess was left perplexed. Alicia explained, embarrassed and humiliated, that only women who'd given birth could produce milk, and she was still a virgin. Humiliated beyond words, Alicia would rather have died than endure this. But even now, Clevetess couldn't kill her. She carried his magical blood in her veins. Suddenly, the baby began to wail again. The monster grumbled that he could restore the child's physical strength. But hunger was another matter entirely. Alicia asked why on earth he was looking after a hidden baby. But Clevetess refused to say, only revealing that the child needed to grow into adulthood. Since Alicia couldn't help with milk, she'd have to be useful in some other way by becoming the baby's mother. A beast like him didn't have the know-how for that. Alicia protested that she'd never raised a child either. But seeing no way to argue with the beast, she advised Clevetess to hire a wet nurse. If he didn't have any money, he could always trade some of the magic ore stored in his fortress. Fuming inside, Glenfall considered attacking the beast the first chance she got. But with no sword in hand and knowing full well she stood no chance against this king, her rage led nowhere. In the end, Clevetess decided that finding a wet nurse was the top priority. Alicia, though, insisted there was no way they'd find a human willing to help a beast his size would throw the whole city into a panic. So, she offered to go instead, taking the baby to a wet nurse herself. Deep down, she just wanted to get the child as far away from this monster as possible. But Clevetess turned her down. He couldn't risk the child dying out of his sight. Still, he realized he'd cause a full-blown catastrophe if anyone saw him like this in a human city. So, he chose to take on the form of the boy who'd watched over the baby among the ruins. Now, he and the baby needed names for their journey into the world of men. The Beast King became Clen, and the child was named Luna. Clen asked the woman's name, and she introduced herself as Alicia Glenfall from Soko Village. At last, the guardian put on shoes and a cloak and set out for the city. The next morning, Alicia bathes Luna in a nearby stream, quietly mourning the size of the scar over the child's eye. Clen soon appears, demanding to know if his servant has cleaned up after the baby. In fact, he criticizes absolutely everything Alicia does to care for the child, finding fault in even the smallest detail, never giving her a chance to defend herself. After all, this boy was, in reality, one of the 4 great kings of the Black Beasts. Taking Luna in his arms, Clen complains that Alicia brought him to her camp, only to find that there's nothing useful here. Alicia explains that anything useful for battle was left behind at an inn at the foot of the mountain. So Clen orders her to find some clean clothes to replace the blood-soaked ones. At every turn, the beast compares her to worms, insisting that even those filthy creatures are cleaner and healthier than a human. Each word only deepens Alicia's humiliation. Later, as she bathes and washes the tunic Luna had worn for protection, Alicia notices something. She had drawn the royal crest of Haydn onto the fabric. Meanwhile, a humanoid figure rides on horseback through the ruins of Hydrat, and the devastation only confirms his suspicion. Challenging one of the Beast Kings was the most reckless thing they could have done. Truth be told, he can't understand why the king chose to make the legend a reality now, especially when so many had dismissed it as nothing but a dream that could never come true. In the end, maybe there was something wrong with the king, and the crown princess was right to worry. Their plan had been to escape the castle with the child during the naming ceremony, but everything had gone down the drain. High on a mountain overlooking the destruction, an officer from Bent and his scouts survey the ruined city, remarking that the legend is, after all, still just a legend. A subordinate asks General Drell what they're supposed to do next, and the general tells him to take the fastest horse and send a message to the emperor. The legend is nothing but dust. With Hydrat Castle in ruins and the king dead, Haydn is now a land with no master, and it won't be just Bent eyeing the territory. Estlin certainly won't stand idly by, and it's likely the beasts of the southern mountains will push into the now weakened defenses. For the general, what matters most now is the secret technique for refining magic ore, handed down only through the royal family of Haydn. The top priority is to uncover that secret before the other nations do. So, the plan is to fall back to the border and regroup the army. Meanwhile, Maynard must stay behind to search for any surviving members of Haydn's royal family, and if he finds any, they must be captured alive. Back with Alicia, she questions Clen about the royal crest on Luna's tunic, wondering if the child might be of royal blood. To her surprise, Clen admits he had no idea. He didn't kidnap the baby for that reason at all. In fact, the child was entrusted to him by a human boy who looked just like the one whose clothes he now wears. At least now it makes sense that the baby was found in the rubble of the royal palace. Noticing Alicia's confusion, Clem explains that he was the one who destroyed Haydn's capital castle and killed the king, which only makes Alicia panic even more. The beast claims it was all self-defense, he was attacked first, while the heroine points out that, with the king dead, everyone will be searching for the child who can inherit the throne, especially because of the secret behind magic or refining. Rumor has it, only heirs to the kingdom can use Haydn's furnace. Given all this, Clem finds it increasingly logical to raise this little brat. He'll make the kid king and pull the strings from behind the scenes. It's the perfect position to eliminate Haydn's most important figures whenever he chooses. At this point, Alicia realizes she should have kept her mouth shut. But it's far too late now. Clem is already looking to find a wet nurse for Luna. So he orders Alicia to get ready and take the magic ore into town to get some money. With the ore slung across her back, Alicia reassures herself that everything will work out. Even if Clem gives Luna back, a strange horned boy could never be trusted as a close confidant. Those horns also grow among the people of Org, so they're not entirely rare. But since no one can confirm his identity, it wouldn't be enough, and even if Clem took another form, that wouldn't change anything. He can't hide those horns, and it's only a matter of time before he realizes it himself. Who knows how he'll react when he does. For some reason, this magical beast is obsessed with the child, and if anyone dares to harm Luna, humanity itself might pay the price. That's exactly what Alicia Glenfall must prevent from happening. In the end, maybe that's her only true role as a hero. Lost in these thoughts, Alicia panics when she sees a man attacking Clem and Luna with a club. The blow lands so hard it stretches the boy's neck, and the rest of the bandit gang closes in on them. Alicia is certain these mountain thieves are about to get what's coming to them, but suddenly, Clem collapses, bleeding heavily. The woman screams in despair and takes a blow that knocks her out cold. In the next scene, Glenfall relives the moment she was jolted awake in the carriage, on her way to meet the Beast King alongside her comrades. This time, as she wakes, she realizes it was nothing more than a bad dream, a nightmare, and that the 13 heroes are destined to defeat Clevites. But as she finally comes to, the warrior finds herself in a cage with other prisoners. Clem, wearing a crooked smile, tells her they've been captured. Alicia wonders how the kid can stay so calm in a situation like this, but he simply tells her there's nothing to worry about, Luna is fine, even though she was crying just a moment ago. Still confused, Alicia asks how Clevites could have gone down like that after only one hit. The boy admits it surprised him too. He didn't expect this skinny body, with its thin skin, to be so weak. Then Alicia wants to know why Klein doesn't just escape. He explains that now he's human, and until Luna takes the throne, he has to hide who he really is. Besides, he wants to see this side of the human world for himself. Apparently, everyone in this cart was kidnapped just like they were, and the boy is determined to figure out why. Alicia says the men who attacked them are mountain bandits, and since the prisoners are still alive, they're probably going to be sold as slaves. Klein asks how strong these bandits are. Alicia says they're nothing special compared to any regular adult, but the problem is they'll use any dirty trick to avoid losing. In short, they're a bunch of scum, and Klein shouldn't use them as a benchmark for judging humanity. After the journey, the caravan reaches a huge pit in the middle of the forest. The bandits unlock the chains and split up the prisoners, sending men and the elderly to one side, women and children to the other. Suddenly, one of the prisoners tries to make a run for it, but a bandit throws a knife into his back, ending his rebellion on the spot. With that done, the apparent leader steps forward and announces that they are the Crows, and anyone who steps out of line will be dealt with, no questions asked. As he finishes, he spots Alicia and leads her off to a separate building. At the door of another house, a woman orders Klein to come inside. When she notices a baby in the boy's arms, she calls out for a girl named Nell. Poor Nell stumbles in, as clumsy as ever, and falls to the floor. She quickly apologizes to Donna Carm, but the woman ignores her and tells Nell to take care of both the baby and the boy. As Nell looks at Luna, she can't help but be charmed. At the bottom of the pit, beneath a thick layer of water, lies a magical sword and possibly other creatures lurking in that submerged world. Meanwhile, the bandit takes Alicia to a man called Vroko. As soon as he's addressed by that name, he corrects the man he only wants to be called boss now. Zazak is long dead, so he's in charge. Another bandit complains that he made that decision on his own, but Vroko assures them he can convince anyone who disagrees with the help of his favorite little monster, Betty. When Alicia actually sees the troll with her own eyes, a terrible beast from the west, she can't help but wonder how anyone could tame a creature like that. Vroko grabs the bag Alicia was carrying, realizing it contains ores from Moon Mountain, a place protected by Clevites. The boss recalls the recent story. The king of Haydn gave regalias to 13 heroes and sent them to defeat the great king of the black beasts, but apparently they failed. There was even talk that one of the heroes was a woman. Vroko notes that magical ore this pure doesn't show up anywhere near people, after implying that Alicia knows a lot more than she lets on. He comments on her impressive physique, since she didn't wet herself in fear when facing Betty. He suspects she might really be one of the heroes sent to Moon Mountain. By the way, he mentions that Hydrat was destroyed by Clevites, which, as far as the crows are concerned, is excellent news. With that, Vroko draws his weapon and points it at Alicia. She's stunned by the sight of the reddish blade. Vroko confirms that it's made of the steel that only the royal family can forge monohydrite. The stronger the red, the purer the metal. Still, he admits his weapon is fake. After all, they don't just deal in human beings in this business. Magic swords bring in a fortune, and the suckers buying them never know the difference. Besides, Vroko mentions that, from what he's heard, every member of the royal family died in the castle during the beast's attack. Now, if there's no more monohydrite after Hydrat's fall, the value of these magic weapons will skyrocket, just like the regalias and the purest blades forged by kings of old. If things keep going this way, Vroko and his crows will be filthy rich. And as if that weren't enough, they've figured out how to store regalias, a complicated technique with only two possible ways to do it. Either be recognized as a hero by the king, or take the regalia from a hero. Of course, stealing is easier, especially since most of those chosen warriors die in wars out in the land of beasts. Sure, it's tough to reach such dangerous places, but that's why the heavens have just delivered a heroine to the crows, right at this most opportune moment. Vroko asks what happened to Alicia's regalia, but she says nothing. He insists she must have dropped it while fleeing from Clevelis, just like the other 12 probably did. Either way, the boss orders Dagarn and Sachai to take her tomorrow to retrieve her regalia. Dagarn questions if, since she's really a hero, maybe she should go get it herself. Vroko curses the bald man, explaining that Alicia knows the whereabouts of 13 weapons, and until she brings all of them to the crows, she can't be killed. Finally, he tells them to get moving with the girl, and if she tries to resist, they can wear her out however they please. The henchmen, delighted by the prospect, drag Alicia out, promising to give her a good time. Meanwhile, Klein is stuck working in a tavern full of drunk bandits. In a corner near the fireplace, Nell is nursing Luna, her very first job as a wet nurse. When a customer comes in and barks at her to bring more drinks, Nell leaves Luna behind to get to work, constantly mistreated and looked down on by everyone there. Another customer asks Klein to bring him more meat, so the boy makes his rounds, serving everyone who's shown an interest in the food. The customer who'd been flirting with Carm comments that this kid's quite a fine obedient, and all but the woman confesses the boy gives her the chills. With those horns, he's probably got orc blood, but his skin is as pale as snow. And then there are those strange eyes. Meanwhile, Nell was carrying more drinks into the hall when a customer sticks his leg out on purpose, making her trip and shatter the jugs. As if that weren't enough, the men responsible for the prank blame her and treat her even more harshly, while Klein watches coldly as the two men drag the girl outside. Overhearing the other customers, Clevitis figures that pair are about to make Nell's life even worse. Sure enough, outside the tavern, the men smack the girl's backside as punishment. When they're done with her, they leave Nell behind. Even after what she's just been through, she swallows her tears and goes to check on Luna. Meanwhile, the two men walk back to the tavern, mocking Nell, saying she's as ugly as a cow. Suddenly, they start to stagger, cough up blood, collapse, and are swallowed up by Klein's shadow. With that done, the beast compliments the wet nurse on her magnificent breasts and suggests they have a little chat. Later, as Nell nurses Luna, she's asked about her past. She admits she's really part of this gang of thieves. She was born here and has always been one of the crows. Nell never knew her father. She had a mother, but only ever saw her from behind. She can't even remember what her face looked like. Given how her mother was treated, she was probably a slave too. And Nell often watched from a distance as terrible things were done to her. Nell's mother disappeared when she was 12, and the girl never found out what really happened. All Nell knows is that after that, all the violence fell on her instead. She was beaten so badly she lost almost all her teeth. These days, she can only hear out of one ear. It was only then that she realized how much her mother had protected her, and at what cost. From then on, Nell lived like an animal. Things got a little better when Miss Carm arrived, offering advice on how to deal with the men. Just give them a little attention, enough to satisfy them so they'd leave her alone. Of course, Nell knows she'll never be like Miss Carm, but things are much better than before, and she's found a way to be useful. She produces plenty of milk, so she can always nurse the little ones. Klein had heard that only women who've given birth can produce milk, so he asks where Nell's baby is. At this, Nell lowers her head and says her child was stillborn. The baby moved inside her, but when he was born, he didn't cry, and Nell blames herself for that. When she felt that tiny body going cold, Nell's whole world turned to darkness. She honestly wouldn't have cared if she died right then. At least she'd get to see her son in the afterlife. But when she came to, Nell felt something warm on top of her. She opened her eyes to find a baby, about 6 months old, clinging to her breast, a child she'd never seen before. The little boy was desperate for milk, and seeing that need, Nell decided to hang on, if only to comfort that baby. Another day, a different child appeared, but where they came from and where they went, Nell has no idea. After that, Nell had to give birth to a second, and then a third, stillborn child. Even so, she had to keep going. There were still children like Luna who needed her milk. She wanted to give those babies a chance at happiness, since her own never got that chance. After hearing all this, Klein reaches out and tells her he wants to hire her as Luna's wet nurse. Even though he doesn't trust people, he sees real kindness in Nell, and more importantly, Luna clearly likes her. So Clevites makes his final offer. Either Nell comes with him and feeds Luna, or she stays and keeps being the crow's punching bag for the rest of her life. On this, Nell admits it's tempting, but she has to turn him down. Klein's still a slave, and she needs to care for the children who are still to come. Back to Alicia. On the way to the Moon Mountain, she's carried to a bridge by Dagarn and Sachai. Before she can even think about jumping, they warn her if she does, she won't land in the lake. The drop forms a funnel, and it's much more likely she'll wind up a pancake on the rocks below. Alicia looks down and realizes this place is actually a magical ore mine. She probably knows this spot better than she thought. She scans her surroundings and notices a man with a rope heading to the edge of a small dock. Dagarn laughs at yet another fool with nothing to live for, while Sachai explains it's tied to the legend of the hero Cordwar. That's exactly what Alicia was thinking. This was the site of Cordwar's final expedition, the Well of the Elba Mine. The man with the rope calls out to the men behind him to keep their promise, while his wife, desperate, wishes him luck. Then the man jumps into the water, and Alicia is horrified. If the legend is true, there's something down there. Sachai confirms her fears, saying the same creatures that killed Cordwar are still in the water. Right on cue, a water beast surfaces, its dinner caught in its jaws, the very man who just tried his luck and lost his life. 2 more creatures join in, fighting over the meat, while the man's wife screams in terror. Alicia shudders, cold with fear, as she witnesses such brutality. These aquatic beasts, known as the Arvensis, arrived with the waters 3 centuries ago and forced the miners to abandon this well. Not even Cordwar, the greatest hero of his age, was able to defeat those terrifying monsters, and back then, there was still solid ground to stand on and fight. Cordwar's regalia, the Flow Divider, earned its name because, as legend has it, it once split a waterfall in 2 before the king's very eyes. That's the weapon challengers are hoping to find when they throw themselves into the water. Sachai didn't even know that sword had a name. He asks if Alicia's weapon has one too, but she refuses to reveal its name to a scoundrel like him. According to her, even though they promised freedom to the man who jumped into the well, there wasn't even a rope for him to climb back out. In other words, nobody ever intended to let him leave alive, a move worthy of useless wretches like the crows. Hearing this, Dagarn points out that perhaps Alicia hasn't grasped her current situation. Her hands are tied, heavy iron balls are chained to her feet, and she's standing on a swaying rope bridge. On top of that, across the bridge, there's a crowd of men itching to make the damsel scream like a pig. On that note, the most deranged of them can't hold back any longer and leaps at his prey, sending the bridge swinging dangerously. Sachai shouts at Pito to pay attention, but being blind, the lunatic just replies that he's not afraid of heights. In fact, he can sense a lot just by smell and sound. He can follow every movement that girl makes. The scent of a woman, the pounding of her heart, it all tells him she's tense, and that gets him even more excited. First things first, Pito plans to cut Alicia's clothes and show her naked to everyone. But just then, the heroine speaks. Who would have thought I'd ever be grateful for my curse? With those words, she dislocates her own shoulders to bring her arms to the front and attacks Peto. In the chaos, his knives accidentally slice through one of the bridge's ropes, sending both of them plummeting. As Dagarn had warned, they don't fall into the water. Instead, they crash onto the rocks below, their bodies utterly destroyed. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.